Welcome to another edition of Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined by Tim Priester, and we're speaking today, Tim, largely because Steve Angeli, reported by Matt Zenitz of CBSSports.com and 24/7 Sports, will enter the transfer portal. I use that wording simply because when I worked on Notre Dame's roster update today that was requested by the Four Horsemen Lounge, I did notice Steve Angeli's name is still on it, while other players that have entered the portal this week are not. Without Angeli, they will have 113 players on the current roster. That does not include, if you're going to look at UND.com, 12 incoming freshmen. But we want to focus on Angeli and what that means and kind of how we think it might have transpired over the last few months.
Yeah, well, first of all due respect for Steve Angeli and what he did for Notre Dame and the way he's handled things. I mean, obviously it's been difficult for him. He's wanted to ascend to the number one job. He's still here, or he was still here, or however you want to phrase it. But he was still here in the spring because he felt like he had an opportunity to be the
Yep.
starting quarterback at Notre Dame. And under most circumstances, he would be. He paid his dues. When he was called upon, he succeeded. I don't think. I mean, I think what he did against Penn State sometimes is a little bit overblown because it was catch the snap and throw the football, but yet he orchestrated a scoring drive at the end of the first half.
That
And if
had
they
not
don't have
happened.
that, yeah, I mean
That had
that
not
hadn't
happened yet.
happened, I mean, and that propelled Notre Dame. It propelled Marcus Freeman's motivational speech at halftime, I think, a little bit as well. So, he did a great job to start against Oregon State in the Sun Bowl, but here's the bottom line. Notre Dame's playing for national titles now. They just played for one. And based upon what we saw the last couple scrimmages of the spring, this looks like a really good football team. I'm not saying they're going to get back to the national championship, but they're competing for national titles now. They're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the country. Their defense is loaded. If they can straighten things out at that interior defensive line, they've got a chance to be really good on that side of the ball. And the bottom line is this: how are you going to win national titles? You've got to have a great quarterback. You've got to have a quarterback that can push the ball down the field. And so now we say, is it CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey? I think it's CJ Carr with Kenny Minchey right there. Maybe there's a package for him in the red zone. I don't know. That's all speculation. But Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman is playing for national titles, and you need a national title level quarterback. Steve Angeli is a good quarterback that can help somebody. But I think to get to the next level, you have to have that upper echelon quarterback.
Pretty sure I'm glad you used the word overblown for what Steve did in the Orange Bowl because it is overblown if you're an outside entity scouting quarterbacks to come start for your team for 2 years.
Yeah,
It is 0% overblown in Notre Dame history. It was
of
a moment
course.
of, I said to you, I don't know if I said this live. I think I did after the game. Mea culpa. After that, I was like, do you stick with Angeli here when we thought Leonard was a little injured? Because Leonard had gotten hurt. That's why he came out. Obviously, they made the right choice and did not. But yeah, overblown if you're a scout, if you're a GM for Miami or Texas A&M or somewhere else saying, all right, well, look at this drive. He just did a great job from Notre Dame fan point of view. That will live forever. And if they won the national
Absolutely.
title, it would live forever because of what he
Absolutely.
did there.
Yeah, I'm not underestimating
No,
what he
of course
did. I'm
not. But
just
there are two ways of looking at that drive.
right. Yeah,
And
no doubt
thankfully, we don't
about it.
have to anymore. That's the last time we have to look at the drive,
But you
though.
need, you need a quarterback that can make the throws that CJ Carr made in the blue gold game to the
Yeah.
two tight ends. You have to look, everybody knows this. 14 play, 80-yard drives consistently, it's difficult to do. You need
Yep.
some 6 play, 70-yard drives.
Yeah.
And I think that a guy like CJ Carr gives him an opportunity to do that.
It's an interesting dynamic now because this is Angeli's timeline I'm going to offer. But it's really about Kenny Minchey, I think. If you had said who's going to transfer out, if you either one of us, if we had to say it on and we had to send our salaries onto it and say this is who's going to transfer out, and you asked us in October, we both, I think, would have said Kenny Minchey.
Mhm.
If you asked us after the bowl game, the Orange Bowl, we both, I think, would have said Kenny Minchey. Little less because Steve would have suitors. Once spring started at the very beginning of it, and we interviewed all of them, we thought, well, it's going to have to be Minchie, right? Angeli's fighting this thing to the death. And then when you saw the Jersey scrimmage and we all saw the blue gold game, it was like, I don't know if that's going to be Kenny Minchie anymore. I find it a fascinating timeline, and that's what kind of matters now for Notre Dame fans is Kenny Minchie made this a three-person race. Maybe it always was, but I dismissed it as a three-person race. I am guilty of it. I did not think it would be a three-person race.
A lot of us did. I mean, you, me, and Samson all said that the other
Yep.
day on a podcast, and I think it's understandable. And I don't know where the coaching staff's head was on it going into it. They wanted to make it fair, which it was owed to Kenny Minchie at the very least, and he impressed. He did. He went out there and played with confidence, he played with swagger. I
Hmm.
mean, he carried himself like, hey, I'm going to win this damn thing. And so you really appreciate that. And look, there had to be I've said this a couple times now. There had to be transparency for Marcus Freeman. It's
Yep.
2025. You can't pull the wool over the eyes of guys and think that they're just going to hang in there. You've got to have a very honest conversation. And so I guess I'm just assuming, but I think that there was an honest conversation with Steve Angeli that look, we're going to go in this direction. I think most, they're fans that they were on Angeli's side. They wanted him to win it. I understand that, but I think that when you consider what most Notre Dame fans want, I think they wanted a turning of the page so that Notre Dame could insert a guy with a higher ceiling. And that's CJ Carr and then Kenny Minchie, we've talked about it. Do you do a red zone package? Maybe that's not necessary, but if you want to keep him, and now again, I'm assuming that it's Carr, but if you want to keep Minchie engaged, you got to make him feel like he's a big part of what's happening at the quarterback position moving forward.
Yeah, we have 3 months for talking about Carr versus Minchie, of course,
I
in the red
know,
zone
I know.
package. But another point you brought up, I think, is important for fans listening. There's plenty of people that wanted Angeli, obviously, for the loyalty and for what they've seen him do, and for Kenny Minchie, because, as you said, dual threat athlete playing with swagger, and CJ Carr, because they wanted CJ Carr to start since the moment he signed with Notre Dame.
Mhm.
Remember when he was a junior? Oh, can he enroll early? He was a junior. That was actually coming up. Can he reclassify? That's how bad Notre Dame was at quarterback back then. And for us, the goal for us was we didn't have a favorite to start. If I heard Steve Angeli won the job in the spring, I'd be like, wow, he must just be on everything. And I wouldn't have cared ever again because it's not our job to care who that is. But I get it that fans take sides with quarterbacks. Analysts and media are not supposed to be taking sides. I find it intriguing that it's either CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie because they're turning the page to a new era at quarterback at Notre Dame. Angeli would kind of be a new era, not the same, right? I mean, he's been
No,
dabbling in there since the Sun Bowl, which seems like remember Mike Denbrock said he couldn't remember August? I cannot remember the Sun Bowl from 2023 at this point. So this does feel like a new era at Notre Dame. And then that does transition away from the coaching staff's decision to fans can be excited for a new era at Notre Dame.
yeah. If Angeli had come out of the spring winning the job, obviously he didn't. Otherwise, he
Right,
would be
right.
here. If he had won the job, we in the media, I know you and I would have said, okay, Carr's just not ready. He's not
Yeah,
diagnosing. He's
right.
not seeing things the way Angeli does. Um, you know, and I'm sure even right now he doesn't see things quite the way Angeli does, but they had to be satisfied enough that,
Yeah,
okay, this is going to translate. And Tim, I think that I don't know if I don't even remember who said it. It may have been you, but this is going to be a great offensive line. I
yeah,
mean, this offensive line should be a Joe Moore Award finalist at the least. And so, maybe what Carr doesn't quite understand with everything in the passing game and reads, et cetera. You have a great offensive line with great running backs. You're going to have a dynamic running game. So, does that give you a little bit more confidence? Hey, we can go to the younger quarterback knowing that he's going to be well protected. We've got a Heisman Trophy candidate
right.
lined up behind him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't,
No, I
I think
do.
when you start adding everything up, you feel good about a young guy being behind a veteran, not, well, the hell, they're not even really that veteran yet,
Yeah,
but
they're pretty
they're
grizzled at
good.
this point.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's good. It's good. And we talked about the other day that Charles Jagasaw is going to be really, really outstanding.
yeah, if you think about it, Tim, other than at center, when they line up at Miami, you can say, this guy started in the national championship, or this guy started at 15 games. This guy started the national championship. This guy started 15 games the national championship. This guy started 16 games the national championship. That becomes veteran. That's modern world veteran. You don't have to have
No, that's true.
41 starts at tackle going into your fifth year because you can't go pro.
Although
So I think
most of those guys will probably be back in 2026.
yes, yeah. Some of them will be able to go because they're good enough. You want one of them to be able to go because he's good enough to go.
True.
That's how it
True.
works out too. Trying to sum up your final point about having faith in Carr and Minchie, I do still think it's about Minchie Because if they look at CJ Carr and they have an honest conversation with Steve Angeli, maybe the conversation was, I think we're going with CJ. You and Kenny are in a real good battle for number two. Even if they said, we'd love you to stay as our number two, I feel like they were able to say, we can just tell Steve the truth that he might not beat out Kenny Minchie either. The truth, the
Right.
absolute truth. I know Marcus Freeman and his staff are really good at telling players where they stand and letting them know, but most of the time those guys are not at the top part of the roster because you don't want to do that. You can't. You can't tell everybody, hey, by the way, I think Jeremiah Love deserves more carries than you do this year, going into a season every time. Like obviously it's obvious now, but it wasn't last year. So I think it's about Minchie making the move, and I kind of hope you're right though that it's about wow, look at CJ Carr. We just need to make sure he knows he's our plans and our backup is going to be our
Yeah.
backup.
You
Now
know, and
Kenny
the other
Minchie,
thing,
Tim, has 3 years. Steve Angeli has two. So an honest conversation involves that too. Like
yeah,
Steve, your career you can start right now with 2 years somewhere else.
right. You know, and I think the corollary to all of this talk about the quarterback position is move Tyler Buckner to quarterback. So you've got your fourth guy there. Not that you know he's well, heck, you know, we're talking about red zone.
Well,
If you got
and he's a scout
you
team
got to
guy. He's a
go,
great scout team QB. I
yeah.
mean, he
I mean, if
has
you
to
got to
be.
go red zone, you might as well go with Buckner.
Yeah,
But
that's a good question. I mean, Minchie looked really athletic. He was in a red shirt, though. I've seen Buckner look really athletic in a white and a blue shirt. So maybe you do lean towards Buckner a little bit. Minchie just seems bigger. I think Buckner lost some weight for lacrosse too, don't
yeah,
you?
he
He doesn't seem
probably
as big.
did. But I mean, Buckner's more of a Riley Leonard type runner.
He's
He's
a
more
running back.
inclined to run through people,
Yeah,
whereas Minchie's going to run by you more likely.
that's a great point because Tyler Buckner is a red zone quarterback if needed, rather than a
Yeah,
15 game quarterback would make it through the season because he wouldn't get hit 200 times. He'd get hit 10.
right. But either way, I think you just move him back quarterback. You
Yeah.
got four guys in the quarterback's room, five with a walk on Rezak, and you know, it just gives you a little bit more stability in that whole room.
To wrap this up quickly, and we should save this for Monday when more people leave the team, because in 3 days, transfer
Yeah,
portal
it's
era,
going to
more people
happen.
are going to leave the team,
Yep.
and we'll have a Monday Irish Illustrated Insider full podcast. Right now, not including Steve Angeli, who is on the roster, there are 112 players on Notre Dame's roster. There's 113 players on Notre Dame's roster. That does not include the incoming summer freshmen.
Hmm.
Um, the people that have transferred out have been removed, other than Angeli. You could say, well, some guys transferred on Monday or Tuesday. That's why that is the case. But Zach Yoakum did announce portal intentions yesterday. He's not on the roster. So there are a dozen walk-ons still looking to make the team. That's where we get down to. You have to have it. You're going to figure maybe somebody joins the team. You're looking at 8, 9 players that have to make this team. Tim, we both agree. We don't think it will only be the walk-ons that don't make the team. Someone in the
Uh,
scholarship realm won't make or will be asked
that's
to go play football elsewhere.
Hey, if you want to, you know, if you want to benefit from the NIL, the flip side is that some scholarship guys are, you
Yep.
know, the whole, you know, we grew up, you get a scholarship offer to Notre Dame, that's guaranteed for 4 years. It just can't work. It can't work that way anymore. And I did want to mention, you know, Kennedy Urlacher, obviously, is in the portal and, yeah, he has a chance to be a really good player, but when you look at Notre Dame's depth chart and the length of the players back there,
Yep.
the freshmen they're bringing in that are 6'3" and 6'4", Urlacher's going to play. Wherever he goes, I mean, I hope he picks a spot where, you know, he gets a chance, a good run at it.
Right.
He can play a lot of quality college football for somebody.
He might be the best rising sophomore player to transfer where I'm like, oh, that's too bad, as opposed to, oh, damn. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Because
yeah, no, sure.
yeah,
I mean, I know people are, you know, yeah, they saw him play against Purdue. He was really physical. We all saw
oh,
that.
God, it was
Yeah, I mean, it
fantastic
was
to watch.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was outstanding. But these things are going to happen now. What would you rather keep Tay Johnson?
Yeah, I know
I think
exactly.
yeah,
Well,
I think you would.
that's probably what
Right.
it came down to, actually.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. Jadon Blair, Ethan
Yeah.
Long. I mean, those guys, you know, those are early entry freshmen.
Yeah.
Those two, anyway, you know, that looked pretty darn good this spring when we saw them. So this is going to happen a lot. You hate to lose a guy like Kenny Urlacher, but a player like that, it's like find a good spot to play, and he can be a multiple year starter and play some really good college football.
And before we sign off, and the roster mavens out there will catch me, 18 walk-ons, not 12. It's 12 incoming freshmen from the summer, 18 walk-ons still on the roster. It looks
Theo's
like,
got all the numbers, man.
yeah,
He's on it.
preponderance are our offense. And then there's about 5 or 6 defensive players. If you look at I will have a roster update coming up on IrishIllustrated.com, probably right after this post, actually. And there is one mild surprise from the walk-ons. I'm going to contact Notre Dame because he's been there a while. Not on the roster. So I will. I don't want to announce it here because if I find out from Notre Dame, then I can remove it from print. It'll be perfect, Tim Priester. But there is a longtime walk-on not on the roster, and he was as of Monday. So that's what makes a difference. Until Monday, when we have an Irish Illustrated Insider podcast. For Tim Priester, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for watching Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis.